we're on the main roads a lot, just people see us more. We'll get in the neighborhoods.
Gotcha.
As well, but we're more on the main roads because that's where most of our traffic crashes happen. And try to calm the traffic so that they don't get too crazy, crash all the time.
Is being near a university really change up things crime rate wise?
I don't think for us it really does. I mean, we've got university students that live here in the apartment complexes, but I don't think for us it really changes much. Mm-hmm. And we might go to like loud parties or something like that, mm-hmm. and just because the kids are 20 doesn't mean that they're in college. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it really has an effect on us.
Gotcha. Okay. Because from what I guess my university and like people, the lead who does the GIS program and so on, one of the reasons why he said it was a good idea for me to like work with this department and so on was because of the highway that crosses into 480, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. and a lot of crimes and traffic stuff coming through there.
Right, and that's accurate. That is very accurate. Unfortunately, a lot of our shoplifters, a lot of our mostly just shoplifters, but a lot of them are from Cleveland and Cleveland suburbs.
Oh, okay.
It's amazing how many people are from that area that we get for shoplifters. For us, it's always, why do you drive 45 minutes to Walmart Streetsboro to steal something? But
right.
I don't know if they're hoping that maybe people don't recognize them, or it's a sleepy town, so maybe they won't be caught. I don't know.
Is it like criminals that have like first-time offenses, or is it usually somebody who's...
They've usually stolen before. Like, it's usually just petty stuff. It's usually not like any like felony level thing. It's just usually just petty little shoplifting things. So, but it's amazing how. I mean, and we have a lot of transient traffic through here. Period. Mm-hmm. We don't really like when we're dealing with domestic situations, or a lot of times even like thefts from vehicles or something like that. Mm-hmm. Those are in general people that live here. A lot of the other stuff are outside people, like a lot of times shoplifters are. Mm-hmm. I can't even tell you the last time I stopped or that I've arrested somebody for shoplifting that was actually from Streetsboro. They're always from out of town somewhere. So, same with Target. Target's the same way. Mm-hmm. I would have never, until I had this job, I would have never thought that would be that way. But it's the way it is.
That is.
And even like in Aurora,
mm-hmm.
at the farms up there,
mm-hmm.
it's almost always somebody from a Cleveland or Cleveland suburb that's shoplifting up there. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if they come here thinking it's a sleepy town that they're going to get away with it. I don't know. I don't know what the reasoning is why it's that way.
That's interesting. You wouldn't think that, because you think somebody like in town would have more experience, like where to go and so on.
Right. But at the same time, most of these stores have video surveillance. Mm-hmm. That's pretty decent. It's not always great, but it's pretty decent. And there's less of a chance of you being identified if you go to, like, for us, like, I'm good with faces. I can't remember names for the life of me. Mm-hmm. But, like, if I see a face, I'm like, I know who that, I've dealt with that person before.
Gotcha.
Where, if it's somebody local, mm-hmm. that we've maybe picked up before or dealt with before, if they steal something from our local Walmart, there's going to be video of them, and we're going to pick them out. Where if you go to, and that might be why people come here to do it, so that there's less of a chance of being picked out by either a police officer or the people at the store or whatever else. So.
And like this strip here, like where Target is, like the Fun Buffet, mm-hmm. Kmart, and so on, like, or Circle K, Kmart. It's a lot of like crimes happen like around this strip, you think?
I mean, in general, most of our crime in this area is just shoplifting, and it's mm-hmm. not like it's every day. Mm-hmm. like once every week or 2 or 3. It's not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's a bar up there. Every once in a while we have a fight in a bar up on that street, but it's not that often.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe once every 3, 4, 5 months for that. And the thing is too is there's a lot of crime. Well, I shouldn't say that it's not a busy street, because there's a lot of crime at certain places that they don't report to us. Their policy is we'll just let them walk out.
Gotcha.
So I don't think that's a good corporate policy, but apparently they make enough money that the little bit that they lose is not a big deal to them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of places that may have like a shoplifter or something like that, and they just won't report it to us. So I know for a fact that happens. How often it happens, I can't say, but I know that happens in this area and some of the businesses around here.
Okay.
So that's another interesting thing too. Is like some places will prosecute you for what seems like nothing, and other places you can steal $1,000 worth of stuff and they won't do anything. So
Exactly. So it really depends on what business is.
it depends on the business. It depends on their corporate policies. Walmart, you know, Walmart I think is so big and has so many stores, and they lose so much money that like pretty much anytime they catch somebody, they're going to prosecute them. It doesn't matter how small it is, because they just lose, you know, so much money from shoplifting. So that's the only way. Really, the only way they can combat it is to prosecute it, you know, and hope that maybe if they're found guilty later, they get some restitution, you know, back for whatever they've lost. So.
I never thought about it. Because I've like college kids. I've worked in retail stores, and a lot of the times that was the case. Like if you see something, don't tell the manager. But most of the time, nothing ever happens, because at least the fear with the experience I've had was, well, if they actually didn't steal something and you're accusing them of stealing something, then we're just going to get outlashed.
Right.
But
and there's also the liability too of if you stop somebody and some physical harm comes to them, is that going to be worth more than the $30 pair of socks somebody took? You know. So that's another reason why a lot of the corporate policies are just let them go. It's not worth it for us as a corporation to prosecute it, because there's a chance we could be sued later and it'll cost us a whole lot more than what they took, you know.
Yeah.
So unfortunately you hate to say it, but like after doing this, I've been here for 16 years. You start to see patterns in crime and that sort of stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of the crime is lower income people. There's not a whole lot of, you know, white collar people shoplifting or overdosing. It happens, but it's not that often, you know. So it's a lot of times it's, you know, lower income. Like we just had in one of our apartment complexes on the other side of town, a disturbance between two ladies. One pushed another one. It's Section 8 housing, which is government subsidized apartments.
Yeah.
Wasn't anything major, but that's one of the things there. Then another apartment complex, somebody parked too close to another person. The person said, "Hey, you're parking too close to my car." They got into a verbal argument over it, and it's usually, like, the nice thing with streetsboro is there's not a lot of major crime or violent crime. We have a lot of disturbances, you know, verbal disturbances, a lot of petty theft, whether it be stealing change from a car or shoplifting. But in general, it's pretty quiet. So,
do you guys, well, I guess I should ask this question first. Is there any chance we could possibly go through those apartments in some of those areas if you're willing to? And one thing that I know I definitely want to ask is the overdose crimes in streetsboro. Is there, I should guess, because I kind of want to differentiate between fact and fiction. Is there a lot of them that happen in in streetsboro? Because that seems to be the rumor, I guess I should say.
I would say even just a few years ago, yes. I think the word has finally gotten out with people and the heroin that a lot of people are dying from this stuff. So I mean, there was at one point we were having probably at least one a week of an overdose.
Wow.
And I haven't been to an overdose now, and myself in 2 months at least, if maybe even longer than that. So, like I said, but we were having one at least once a week, and I haven't really heard of. There might have been one a few weeks ago, if I remember right. But oops, sorry, foot slipped on the
Hidden Lakes. So this is one of the apartment complexes?
This is actually one of our trailer parks here.
Okay.
A lot of times it's fairly quiet. A lot of the problems we deal with here, and I don't know why it is a lot of neighbor problems.
Oh.
I don't know if it's because they're right on top of each other, or what. But every once in a while we'll get some physical altercations here. But a lot of this area here is more neighbor disputes. You know, you're standing on my yard. You know, you're blowing leaves on my grass. Nothing major, but I can't remember if we've had any overdoses in here or not. I know our other trailer park, we've had some overdoses in before. I can't remember if we've had any here. There may have been one that I don't know. You know, I don't know every call that happens on all the shifts. But this is one of our, I don't want to say busier areas, but unfortunately the two trailer parks are a little busier than the typical rest of the neighborhoods in town. But again, it's not, we have nothing crazy.
So these are more like lower income homes and so on that don't have.
Yeah, a lot of people here just don't have anything. You know, they've got enough money to have a warm place to live. You know, they really don't have a whole lot else. The other trailer park that we'll go to, you'll see there's a big difference in the quality of the housing in there and everything else. The other trailer park, they try to rip out the older trailers and put in newer ones too. Once people move out or give them. But this is probably our lower income or lowest income. One of our lower income areas in town is this trailer park here.
I live in Aurora, so I go to Kent, so I often go through Streetsboro, but I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah.
Because I know of the one trailer park where it's kind of next to that Rejuvenation Spa place. Is that?
That's the bigger one of our trailer parks. Yeah, that's the one we'll go through there as well. And we have, like I said, the problems in there too. But the thing with the management there is they really try to get rid of the people that are causing problems. Because the amazing thing is a lot of people.
705-500.
Pardon me. A lot of people in those.
Go ahead.
At least in that trailer park. I don't know about this one, but a lot of them just rent the
control.
trailer.
Okay.
They don't really actually own the trailer. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times the park itself owns the trailer, and so they'll kick them out if they cause too much problems or anything else. They really try to get rid of the problem people if they can. The problem with that is it costs them money to get rid of them. You can't just say you're out of here. You can't say you have to leave. You got to go through eviction process and everything else.
Oh, okay. So they really I did not know that.
Yeah, you can't. Even if you're renting, even an apartment up here. Let's say you're renting and you're going against your lease somehow, whether it be causing disturbances, not paying your bill. They can't just kick you out and change the locks on the door. They have to. If you aren't willing to go out on your own, they have to evict you, which means going to court, filing paperwork to actually get you out. So a lot of people don't know that. But yeah, that's what. It is amazing though. The people that have been evicted before know that they can't just kick me out. So
they can kind of like.
So they'll sit and cause as much suffering as they can until they have to go out, basically, or we arrest them. Basically by court order. So it doesn't happen very often, but there's times where when they're being served their eviction stuff, the sheriff's office is the one that handles serving that paperwork, and sometimes they'll call us if they think there's going to be a problem or something like that. I couldn't tell you how many people get evicted. I have no idea, because we don't, unless the sheriff's office calls us, we don't have any idea that they're evicting somebody. But usually, this is kind of an industrial area up here. We usually don't have anything in the industrial area, not even break-ins or anything like that. It's usually pretty quiet.
Have people tried to break in, or nah?
Not that I know of up in this area here. I'm trying to think. Years ago, in another industrial area, we had somebody break in and they tried to get change out of some candy machines and some pop machines.
Gotcha.
And they destroyed the machines and broke a window and some other stuff. But other than that, there's really, like I said, we don't even have people going through vehicles, because there's a lot of company vehicles parked, semi trucks, that sort of stuff, and we've not even really had any complaints of that.
CD and Fasten now?
Fastenal, yeah, they do. What do they do? They have fastener products and industrial things that they'll deliver to companies if they need some parts or that sort of thing. It's kind of like a hardware store that delivers.
Oh.
So kind of similar to that.
And so this is more like a residential area?
Yeah, this is a residential area here. This is more of a higher end apartment complex for here. And then once you get past there, there's all residential back in here. We have in here in this apartment complex, again, it probably has to do more with income. Like I said, these apartments are well over $1,000 a month.
Settlers Landing. Sorry if I say the things.
Okay.
I have to make sure the recording hears it.
So, but these are a little more high-end ones. We get the typical domestic disputes here that happen everywhere in town, but they're not frequent, but they happen here. I can't even say that they happen here more often than any place else, but
so domestic disputes, basically fighting, verbal.
Yeah, verbal. That's we call a domestic dispute a verbal argument.
Okay.
Domestic violence is when there has been some sort of physical. You can also be charged with domestic violence for threatening to do physical harm.
Gotcha.
So basically, the law says if you reasonably believe that them saying they're going to punch you in the face is going to happen, that's domestic violence.
Gotcha.
If they say via a text message, if your spouse, if they're in California and they send you a message saying I'm going to punch you in the face, that would not be a reasonable threat, because obviously they're 3,000 miles away. They can't do anything to you. But if you're having a verbal dispute and they say if you don't shut up or something like that, I'm going to punch you in the face, that would be reasonably a threat.
That's very interesting. Has technology kind of changed the way the police department and the justice system kind of views violence in that kind of manner?
No, I don't think so. I think we may hear about domestic disputes and violence a little bit more especially with everybody having a cell phone now, because before, a lot of times places had one phone. And I'm the same way at my house. You're probably the same way where you live. Is you don't ever go anywhere in your house without having your phone, at least in your hand or within arm's reach. That's just the way society's kind of become.
Okay.
And so I think it's easier to maybe report it now than maybe before, where I don't have to, it's a lot harder for me to keep you away from a phone if I want to. if you've got a cell phone in your hand, as opposed to one that's on the wall in the kitchen and we're in the bedroom.
Gotcha.
So I think as far as that goes, I think it makes it easier to report. I don't know if that makes it people report it more or not, but that's the only thing I think that really. But we also have with technology too is it's easier to take the person's phone or to break a phone.
Gotcha.
You know, back when all phones were hung on the wall, it was a lot harder to break a phone. Where a cell phone, you throw it up against the wall, you're going to break it. You know, where like a regular old touch-tone phone, if you throw the handset up against the wall, you pick it up and you still talk. So we'll charge people with disrupting public service for that. That's actually a felony level offense. So if you're trying to call 911 and I disrupt that, then I could be charged with disrupting public service.
Gotcha.
So here's some condos here. They're really we don't really have any calls in these condos areas. I did over in just actually we'll go back through there, but just last week a resident was walking through and found a crack pipe on the ground.
Oh.
So we'll go back over there so you at least get the location.
Okay. Awesome. Well, not awesome.
Not awesome, but yeah.
You know.
Some good data for you.
Right. Thank you. I mean,
I just remembered as we were driving by, as I was telling you, I was like, oh yeah,
anything you can think of. I mean, I'm keeping it very general
sure.
with crime because I know streetsboro, obviously not Detroit, nothing like Chicago,
Right.
anything like that. But any good data, I feel like any students can collect about it.
Right.
Could potentially help in the future for something.
And that's why we do a lot of automatic reporting. Like we're required to report statistics to the FBI and everything else because for that same reason is they're trying to find better ways to do crime fighting, you know? And so if you've got the statistics, you know, who, what, when, and where, then it's, you know, maybe you can start to determine trends. The same exact thing that you're basically doing, you know? So they just don't go around in the car with cameras and GPS location, but
right, 16 million.
But even like crash reports, we
Heath Lane condominium.
Yeah, Heath Lane condos, right here, right on this corner here. One of the residents was just out for a walk, and laying in the ground there, he saw a little blue thing. Looked at it, and he saw some aluminum foil on the end. And like, well, obviously that's somebody's using that for smoking. I didn't send it out to be tested, but it was what it was is a little plastic pen with some aluminum on the end, and there was some sort of burnt residue in the end. I don't know if it was crack or I didn't smell it to see if it was maybe marijuana. But I mean, it very well could have been a crack pipe. All we do is destroy those. I mean, nobody's got a camera up to see who threw it down. You know, they may live in here, they may not. I don't. It's hard to, you know, we're not gonna send it out for DNA testing to see if we can determine.
Right.
One plastic pen cap with some possible drugs on it. The crime lab just doesn't have time to. The state crime lab doesn't have time to deal with something minuscule like that. So.
What would be an example of like something you would take action of with a crime?
I would say if it's caused physical injury or death, for sure. If you got it off of somebody, like let's say you were arresting them or you had a suspicious person, and when you were checking them for weapons, you found it on them for potentially charges later. But just finding something like that on the ground for us, we're not going to go any further than we'll secure it and destroy it, you know, for safety purposes. Just because there's, like I said, the crime lab is backed up with DNA testing for anyways. We use the state crime lab. So just adding one little thing for a misdemeanor, you know, it would only be a misdemeanor possession anyways of drug paraphernalia. So it wouldn't, it's not worth wasting their time for a minuscule thing like that. Like I said, now if it caused injury or death, completely different. But since it's not caused anybody any harm, we just get rid of it.
Gotcha.
So we can't just, and of course, it's something we can't just throw in the trash can. We have to put in our evidence, and there has to be a destruction, and it's a big pain even just to collect it, to destroy it later. It's still a big pain, but at least we're not crying up or tying up the crime lab with it.
Okay. Is there a particular drug that is more prevalent in this area? Like, I'm assuming marijuana is not the
marijuana is, that's always going to be prevalent because it's easy to get and it's cheap, and it's a non-criminal offense anymore too. All it is it's the same level as a traffic ticket. It's a minor misdemeanor offense. We give you a ticket, you go to court, you pay your $150, and you go home. That's the way it is. But I mean, I've heard of people finding LSD. I've heard of finding, obviously heroin. Heroin still is prevalent. Methamphetamine is still probably, don't hear about as much as the heroin now. Seems like that's a problem too. I found a lot with shoplifting. If they're somewhat local, when I say local, like Portage County, almost every time when you ask them why they're shoplifting, it's so that they can sell the stuff later to get some money for heroin. Because it's, from when I've talked to the people, I've talked to a lot of heroin addicts, and they say that once you are hooked, it is, every single one of them says, I don't want to be hooked on it. Every single one of them. And I believe them 100%, but it's just the nature of the drug. It is so hard to get off of. Years ago, I got arrested as a shoplifter at Walmart. She lived up in the area, had moved down to Texas, got clean. She was a heroin addict up here, got clean in Texas, came back up here, got back with the same people she was doing heroin with, decided that she was going to start doing heroin again, didn't have money, so she went and shoplifted a couple of different stupid things that she didn't need, so that she could sell, so she could get more heroin. It was just a vicious cycle. Yeah, it's...
Sorry, I got a little...
Yeah. It's
tough. One big reason why I decided to take up this, just a little background on me, I guess, this particular project is because I've had family addicted to heroin. And that just... We were talking about a little girl in Walmart. My baby cousin was 12 years old when she got addicted to heroin. And her dad was addicted, and that's kind of how she got started. She got really depressed, and then got it from a friend of a friend of a friend. And she's been so far 5 years sober, but she tells me all the time it's a drug you constantly fight. It never goes away for wanting to get high. Even after 5 years,
that's what I've heard. The same exact thing from the addicts, and it's like, I like to think that we are sympathetic without saying, oh, it's okay, you can do it if you want to. Like, I feel like that we are, I think we all as a police department understand how addictive heroin is, and we'll do our darndest to try to get it off the streets. But if we find a heroin addict, we're going to do our best if they're overdosing to try to save their life. We're going to do our best to try to get them some help if we get them for shoplifting. Because we understand, even though we've never dealt with it, the addiction, we understand how hard it is to get off of it. So and I think, and I don't think you get that at bigger departments. The personal stuff, as far as maybe we're more apt to go a little bit extra for somebody, even though we've arrested them. Because it's like I said, I especially, just from the people I've dealt with, know that every single one of them, and you can tell, because you look in their eyes, you can tell if they're telling the truth or not. It's like, every single one of them, I don't want to be addicted, but I can't help it. A lot of them have, like you said, been through treatment several times.
Mm-hmm.
They're clean for a little while, then they get back. It's hard for me to understand why you would go back to the same people that you were with when you got addicted in the first place. I think that would just make it that much harder, but they're your friends.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. It's a terrible, vicious cycle.
Camelot Village.
Yep, we're in Camelot Village now. This is our biggest trailer park here. We have, unfortunately, we have some. I mean, not that we don't have other places too, but we have drug problems here, domestic problems here. There've been some child porn problems here.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we've got even traffic crashes, in here.
Really?
Yeah, like people people run into rocks or people run into other cars. We had one lady, I'm sure she was drunk. I didn't find her until 12 or more hours later, but one of the trailer park's trailers was parked on one of the streets here. Well, she left a friend's house drunk, floored her car, hit this trailer, pushed the trailer into another, and pushed this. It's like an equipment type trailer, like a flatbed trailer. Pushed that into the porch of one of the other homes and damaged the home. Destroyed her car. I found her car at her residence later. But it's like, she just lived right around the corner. Like you could almost see where she lived from where she hit the trailer. So it's, even in a small place, where you'd think, there wouldn't be any crashes in here, there's stuff like that. But alcohol's, we don't deal with it as much in the daytime, but at night, when I work, I've spent at least half my career on nights here. So I can honestly say 90 to 95% of every call that you go on at night, at least one person is intoxicated. Whether that be drugs or alcohol or whatever else. It's amazing just how most of the time it's alcohol. But a lot of our domestic disputes or violence, the people are drunk. Almost every, I'm not gonna say almost every, but a lot of the traffic crashes we have on nights are alcohol related. So it's amazing. Like, people don't think, alcohol is bad, but when you start looking at like the stuff that we deal with, a lot of times alcohol is a factor.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Currently I'm working at Heinen's in Sugar and Falls.
Okay.
And we have, it's a little bit different from most grocery stores because it's more of an, I don't want to say upscale.
No, I know I've been to Heinen's a few times, and I know what you're saying. Yeah.
But we have these wine machines now. And literally the other day I had to call the Sugar and Police. They've become very familiar with us. Because people just get so drunk on alcohol, and then you can't trust them to drive themselves home.
Right, yeah.
That's the issue, and I've called a couple times just because, even though some of them say we have a ride, I don't trust them.
Right.
So they end up usually staying out and waiting for them and then asking them, do you have a ride? And most of the time, as soon as they see one of the officers, they're like, oh crap, we really need a ride now. So they call, but I'd much rather do that than let them go in the heinous parking lot that we have. Yeah.
And, but, alcohol is just, I don't personally consume alcohol at all. Mostly because I'm a picky eater. It's not that I'm, alcohol's bad, but I'm a picky eater and everything else. So, but it's amazing just how much alcohol is related to, especially on the night shift. How much, because a lot of people will come home from a hard day's work, especially blue collar people. I'm going to have a beer or two or three or four because I had a hard day at work. I just want to relax.
Right. Oh.
And then they get in an argument with their spouse over something that's dumb.
Mm-hmm.
That, it's like, why are you even arguing over it in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with alcohol is then your emotions, you can't keep them in check.
Right.
So that's when bad things happen, whether it be, hopefully it's just an argument and you call us before it becomes physical.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, drugs are always going to be out there too. And like I said, we hear more of the heroin stuff, I think, because of shoplifting and because of the overdoses.
Gotcha.
Now, that doesn't mean that there's not other stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I think somebody got some LSD recently. You don't really hear much about cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Methamphetamine is always going to be out there, but we don't really see that so much either. Those are a lot harder to detect, like as an officer too. Marijuana is easy to detect for us because we can smell it. But the other stuff, unless you have a dog available all the time for every stop, and you're not going to do that, that starts to become unreasonable to be searching every single car like that.
Right.
Even though a dog going around a car is not considered a search.
Mm-hmm.
So once you go in, it's considered a search.
Gotcha.
Because the dog is just sniffing the air outside of the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not actually going in. That's why that's not considered a search.
Right.
But unless you have a dog there to sniff that out stuff all the time, which we don't, then that stuff probably goes through more often than we care to think about. That it'd be great to get it off the street,
Right.
but can't do everything all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stuff's just really hard to detect and find. It's a lot easier to find the mass quantities than the minuscule user amounts.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't really get. There's a lot of trafficking that goes along the Ohio Turnpike, but we don't have technically jurisdiction up there, even though it runs right through the center of the city.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is the Ohio Turnpike is considered private property, even though it's owned by the state.
Oh.
So they have their own rules and speed limit sections and all that other stuff. So they basically, for all intents and purposes, they contract with the Ohio State Patrol for security, basically on the turnpike.
Okay.
So that's why if you ever go on the turnpike, you only ever see Ohio State troopers because they're the only ones technically allowed to do anything up there.
Wow.
So they'll call us for help.
Mm-hmm.
If they've got like doing a search on a car, if they find something and we're relatively close because we have a gate here.
Right.
But in general, or we could go up there if somebody runs from a crime from us, or if we're chasing a car, they don't stop for us. We can go up there. We have legal jurisdiction to go up there. We just won't go up there and patrol.
Right.
More industrial, which you've probably been through here 15 million times in your life.
Yep.
So again, with our industrial areas, we really don't have any real problems. I mean, we can't even say that we really have any problems with employees,
Oh, okay.
which is really nice. But
How do you even think about that, employee disputes or something like that?
I mean, there's occasions where they'll say, "Hey, we just fired somebody. They were really mad. Can you have somebody here tomorrow morning, just in the parking lot, just to make sure that they don't show up, or something like that?" And we'll do that. And most of the time, they don't show up. But
There's a lot of
But in general, like I said, Streetsboro is a lot like Aurora. They're very similar. I mean, they're similar size, amount of people and everything else. Aurora's more affluent than Streetsboro, but as far as crime goes, they're very similar. Just not a whole lot of it. It happens. Like I tell people, if their car, some changes taken out or something like that, they seem exasperated that it could happen in their neighborhood. I always say utopia doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I said it would be great if it did. I tell people I would love to lose my job because everybody followed the law and got along. But unfortunately, that's never going to happen. I would love to be unemployed for that reason. The whole world would be a better place if I was unemployed. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen. So, we do our best. We don't have an officer for every street, and that's, you can't really expect that. Either it just costs too much money.
Right.
So most people understand, once you start explaining, does this happen often? Well, no, but it happens. Just like in Aurora, they have the same stuff up there. They have petty thefts. It's not like it doesn't happen. Beverly Hills. You think of Beverly Hills, they have murders and everything else. It's not like just because you have a lot of money, it means that crime goes away.
Right.
So.
I can't even imagine dealing with that. Has there been any deaths or any? I mean, I'm sure there has been. Obviously, not a ton, but like real. I guess I can say like heinous crimes, like almost. I'm just out of my own curiosity, like serial killer kind of things around here. Right?
Not that I know of around here. As far as serial killers, I mean, there's murders and that sort of stuff. Like even Aurora just had one last week, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the 11 or 13. I think he was 13. 13-year-old boy shot and killed his brother while he was sleeping in bed. 11-year-old brother. And that was just one of those things. He was obviously has some mental health issues if you're shooting and killing somebody. I mean, you're obviously not in your right mind in the first place. But this was his brother. Apparently the kid had planned to kill the person that was staying with him. Their parents were like on vacation.
Gotcha.
The person that was watching him planned to kill her and planned to kill his grandparents.
Oh wow.
But once he shot the first time, he kind of panicked and like hid the gun. At least that was the story that I was told. That actually he just pled guilty to that. So. But again, 13. I think he was 13. 13 years old.
So not a lot of, occasional but gun crimes related.
Yeah, we don't really have. We don't have really robberies. Thank goodness. The closest thing a lot of times. Not that we never have robberies, but a lot of times our robberies are more a shoplifter from. The difference between a theft and a robbery is there was some sort of physical threat or a physical action when you committed the theft. So if there's any physical threat or physical action, it becomes a robbery. So like we've charged shoplifters with robbery if they're going out the store, the loss prevention steps in front of them, says you can't leave, you didn't pay for those items, and they push the person down or something like that. That's technically an assault by pushing them down. So we will charge them with robbery with that. That's if we have a robbery, that's typically as bad as it is. We've had bank robberies in the past. That's not as big of a deal now, I don't think, because do you know where the Wendy's is out by Sheetz?
Yes.
Or the Walmart area, that area. Well, there was a bank, First Merit Bank out there. I don't know if you remember First Merit Bank being out there. But because of this proximity to the highway, at the time we had 5 or 6 banks in town, but because it was easy to get to and easy to get out of, that was always the bank that got robbed in town. They got robbed, I think in my time here, 2 or 3 times at least. But now that that bank's gone, we, knock on wood, haven't had a bank robbery in years and years and years now. So. I've had robberies with, at bars. I was on the nights as well. The stuff all happens here. It's just not, luckily it's not frequently.
Right. It's kind of taking me like a minute to process everything you're saying, so don't mind
No, that's
my
okay.
silence.
No, I don't want to talk too much either, since
No, that's good. Talking is fine because as much as information as possible, and it's nice. I'm very glad I did this because you get an entirely different perspective. You know, you can't trust social media.
Oh, yes.
Or
Never
anything
trust
like
social
that,
media.
and of course.
And that's a problem that I think with. I think Facebook was the worst thing ever invented. 'Cause it's nothing but drama.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to prove what one person's saying is true or not.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody takes offense to it.
Yeah.
And if you don't, if you give a differing opinion, even if it's a true differing opinion, everybody takes offense to it. And it's like we get complaints all the time about this person said this on Facebook. And
really, people call you just
yeah,
to...
they've made reports because they don't like what people said about them or to them on Facebook.
That's...
And we say, free country, free speech.
Right.
As long as they're not threatening harm to you, they
Right.
can say whatever they want.
Really diagonal, just north of Pleasant Valley.
So, some people understand.
Obscured by the snow.
Some people don't like it when we tell them that. But it's like, our hands are tied. It's not a crime for somebody to say something bad to you.
Mm-hmm. Right. I would have never, well, I've been surprised before, but I just wouldn't expect somebody to call the police over that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, it happens
Huh.
probably more frequently than you could ever imagine.
526, 500, 733, young,
Don't
sweet.
want to imagine it. I feel like it's such,
Yeah.
it's kind of, I want to say petty almost.
yeah.
Like,
It's almost always Facebook. It's never Twitter or Snapchat. Well, there's some stuff on chat. Some people will post a picture on Snapchat and think it's something, ends up being, nothing. Because Snapchat, with that, I've never done Snapchat. My daughter does it, but apparently once you post something, it goes away. I don't know. I don't understand how.
something within 24 hours, the image or whatever you post is gone.
Yeah. So
Now, I don't think that's text via Snapchat, but pictures
it's
and
pictures.
videos.
Yeah. So some people will post, like maybe a picture of somebody with a gun, and they know who the person is, and then they'll capture that, and then they'll put it on some place, Facebook, and then rumors start to fly, and it's just that's how a lot of the Snapchat stuff comes across. Somebody captures it and then posts it, and then everybody says, "Oh, this is what happened," and even though it's not necessarily the case, hardly ever. But yeah, I started here in 2002, and I was flabbergasted, first of all, that the stuff that people call police for. So I'm like, why? I would never even consider calling the police for that. Like somebody saying something bad on Facebook. I would have never in my wildest dreams, considered to call the police about that. I just would block the person, or just wouldn't, or just get off the social media. That's why I tell people, just stop Facebook. Oh, I can't do that. Why not?
Right.
If you don't like what people are saying, then get off of it.
Huh. That's really interesting. That's got me thinking now. I've never would have. Never.
Yeah. It's like I said. This job really opens your eyes. And sometimes you only hear, in the media too, one side of things. You don't hear the other side.
I feel like the media too. Also, good news is never enough. It doesn't get as much hype, I guess you could say, as bad news.
Well, because I think that's a society issue. I said the reason I think that is because you want, like, it's nice to know that, I don't know, I've always thought, I wonder if people, like these bad news stories, if people like them because they see, oh, look, there's somebody that's worse off than I am, or there's somebody that's dumber than I am, or maybe it makes them feel good about themselves. That's why people like to see that stuff. I don't know. But that's always one of my things I've always thought, when it's like, it's always bad news. Why don't we, and if it's a good news thing, well, why is the news doing all that fluff stuff?
Right. Right. Yeah. It's definitely hard to get good resources nowadays. Accurate and true, but...
Yes, exactly. I mean, there's always, there's always two sides to every story.
Yes.
Always. And even if you hear both sides, they're not always going to be clear. There's still going to be gray areas. Like we are constantly have to try to determine what's in that gray area. That's our job, is to determine that. Sometimes we can't. People get mad. Like, I'm not going to, unless I can prove what you're telling me happened, I can't take action.
Gotcha.
You know? Now we might collect all the evidence we have, and we might say, you know, we think this may have happened, but, you know, we'd like to get a prosecutor to look at it to see if they think that it's something they could prosecute. And then they might give us some advice and say, no, we're not going to pursue any charges, or they say, yeah, go ahead and charge him with this crime.
Gotcha.
But this is the Russell or Streetsboro Greens apartments here. It's these are more Section 8 housing here, so lower income. What's nice about Streetsboro is, even in the 16 years that I've been here, which one?
It's probably one of my favorites.
Dead?
500 to 705.
Don't die on
Oh,
me.
good.
Well, I got like 6 of you guys, because you know
You have a Mr. Jacobs on your station.
you're good.
So, but
Yep. Well, down one.
but Streetsboro, just in the last 16 years, has got a lot more diverse, which is nice. It was a pretty, you know, probably 90% or more Caucasian community when I first started working here, but we have a lot of folks from Cleveland and the Cleveland suburbs, like that person that stopped at a stop sign.
Oh, jeez. I didn't even see it. I was too busy looking at this.
But a lot of people from Cleveland suburbs, a lot of minorities. We have when I started building a lot of houses too, we got a lot of
so I have what I need.
Indian population.
Okay.
Kind of went up quite a bit too. So it's really nice, and actually I have to say that the people that are moving here, I mean, they have their problems there, you know, like every place else. Doesn't matter, you know, where you live or where you're from. You know, a lot of places people have problems, but in general, the people that are moving here they're overall, they're great people. The reason that they're moving here is because they want a better life for their family. They want to get out of whatever life they were in Cleveland or one of the suburbs, and they see that opportunity here. They've got good schools here, you know, affordable housing that's in decent shape. You know, like even those, like I said, that's government subsidized housing there, and I guarantee you, the housing is not that nice in Cleveland.
Yeah.
You know, so it's to me it's refreshing. I think it gives that family and it gives those kids more of an opportunity, and I can appreciate those families,
Right, 26, I'll be quick.
you know, doing what they have to do to give their kids a better opportunity that they may not have had when they were that age, you know.
Right. I didn't think about Streetsboro being so popular of a, not that it's a bad city at all, but you don't, when you go through day-to-day life, you don't think about that
Sure, yeah.
at all.
Oh, lost another one.
Here it comes. You're supposed to have like 3-hour battery, and they're not. It's all right. The recorder has 34-hour battery, so we're fine.
Yeah, it's that kind of stuff that you notice once you like when I've done this job. It's like, you know, because you see more of the city. Like for you, when you drive through here, I'm sure you mostly go on 43 between Aurora and Kent, and that's what you see there is what you see. But you know, a lot of towns and cities, there's so much more.
Right. I mean, I've been back through those streets there, and I've gone down to Frost Road to get here and so on, but I've heard of Streetsboro having a lot of trailer parks and lower income houses, but obviously I haven't gone anywhere to see it.
Yeah.
And another thing too, like the Comfort Inn and Suites and so on, like different hotels, I heard, again, through rumor that some crimes do happen there.
Oh, sure. There are some, I mean, you know, like I said, it's utopia doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Every place has crime. Every area of this city has some sort of crime.
Mm-hmm.
In general, they are very minor
Mm-hmm.
misdemeanor crimes. There are sometimes that they're more serious crimes,
Mm-hmm.
but in general, they're very minor stuff.
Yeah.
You know, Streetsboro has drug problem. Aurora has drug problem. Kent has drug problem. Cleveland has drug problem. Akron has. Every place has drug problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like I said, if those problems did not exist,
Mm-hmm.
there wouldn't be any police department
Mm-hmm.
at whatever city you happen to be in. The police wouldn't be there would be no need for them if there wasn't that stuff didn't happen.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, we've had overdoses at our hotels.
Mm-hmm.
We've had disturbances at the hotels. We've had people who stay longer than they're supposed to. We've had to tell them to leave. We've had giant parties at hotels we've had to break up.
Wow. Any more like, because from what I've kind of researched too, human trafficking issues at all in like these hotels and so on?
Not that we have found.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say that it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
Several years ago, we got a call of a woman begging for money up at the GameStop by Walmart.
Okay.
We go up there. She has a sign. When she sees us, she folds up her sign, puts it in her purse or bag, whatever she had with her.
Mm-hmm.
Try to talk to her. She's Eastern European.
Mm-hmm.
So there's clue number one. Clue number two, she says she was dropped off. And she didn't know where the other people were. Can you call them? No.
Mm-hmm.
So, we start talking to this woman more and more. She was a very pretty woman.
Mm-hmm.
Start talking to her more. She just looked extremely nervous
Mm-hmm.
talking to us. Like, if I tell you anything, something bad is going to happen. Like, that kind of nervous. Not, I'm afraid of the police.
Mm-hmm.
I would really like to tell you, look, but I can't tell you. We are, the 3 or 4 of us that were out talking with her are 99% sure she was being trafficked.
Oh.
We couldn't prove it. She wouldn't tell us. She said she was not in any, she was not going to be harmed. She didn't feel, threatened or anything like that. Now, whether she did or not, I don't know. She sure looked like she was nervous, but just from where she was from, the kind of answers that she was giving us and not giving us, I'd be very surprised if she wasn't, like I said, not being trafficked. That's the only real time I can say that we've ever dealt with something like that I know of, especially that I was involved in. We tried to get her to let us take her somewhere, talk to somebody, and she would not. But whoever her handler was or whatever else, probably was holding something over her head, whether it be harm to her family here or back wherever she's originally from. And so if she says anything, then they're going to be, whether that's unfortunately one of the problems with human trafficking is they always, like the pimps or the handler is always holding something over their head that if you do not do exactly how I say to do it, bad things are going to happen to you and your family. And that's one of the terrible things with human trafficking is, law enforcement probably comes in contact it more than they know, but that's unless the person is willing to, go out of their comfort zone and tell you this is what's happening, there's not, our hands unfortunately get tied. Now, if there's 3 or 4 women or young girls standing on the street corner, it's a little bit different, but yeah, that was one of the tougher ones. It's like, because something is not right. That she's not helping give you that little bit of information that you need to, for all intents and purposes, force her out of that. So.
And it's not, you can't take somebody when they're She wasn't. I guess she wasn't doing anything wrong.
No,
It's just
I mean,
very
she was only thing
suspicious.
she was doing was she was begging for money, and I don't even think up there like in this complex here, you can't panhandle or beg for money or solicit. So every once in a while we'll get a call from here. Somebody's begging for money on the corner. So we'll tell them it's private property here. They have it posted. You can't be soliciting. You have to move on. They say okay. I don't think up in the Walmart one it's posted like that anywhere. So no, she really wasn't doing anything wrong per se. So there's, like I said, that's the frustrating part about our job too, is there's a lot of times that we know what happened, but we don't have the evidence to prove what happened. That gets very frustrating. Do you understand what I mean by that? Like
I do.
Like if you hear the stories, you know who's telling the truth and who's lying, but you can't prove it that you can arrest the person and charge the person with whatever.
Does that end up being? I might be using like a CSI term, like cold cases. Then is that like?
Well, yeah, I guess you could call it that. I mean, the term cold case I think more refers to major crimes, like rape or murder or something like that. But yeah, I guess you could kind of say like we investigated it, whether it be like an assault or a theft, like we write it up as saying that this is what we found. We could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this is what happened. And we'll document it, and any evidence we have we'll save. And then if some other evidence comes to light in the future, whether it be like a disgruntled friend or a spouse or a coworker says, so and so was just bragging about this, then we might open it back up. But for all intents and purposes, cold case is probably a good term. It's not typically used for minor stuff. So.
Oh, wow. So in cases like that where you don't have any evidence, you kind of just have to let it be? Unfortunately,
yeah. I mean, like a lot of times with like the theft of change from cars, and unless we have the physical evidence to prove it, it's just more okay. We documented it. Here's a report if you need it for any reason. The report number, and that's the end of it. That's sometimes hard for people to understand. Is why aren't you doing DNA? Why aren't you doing fingerprints? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Well, for the minor stuff, we just a lot of times can't take the time and clog up the system with that stuff. And a lot of times you can't get that stuff either. I've gotten fingerprints off of things before. There's other times where you're like, oh, I'm sure I can get prints off this, and I don't get anything. So the prints have to be just right. It's not, it's not like if you do this and then even just move your hand a little bit, there's not going to be a print because you're smearing whatever was there. And like see how this is has like a texture to it. If there's a texture, it is very hard to. You might get something off if you have the right equipment. We don't have the right equipment, but you might get something if you have the right equipment to do that. Now, like a screen like this, if I would do it, it would come up. But if I put my finger on there, then like kind of twist it, then it would just be a smudge of grease, basically, from your oils on your hand. So
it has to be just okay. I get it. Why it would be so difficult to say that, because it's like you have to get it just right.
Yeah, it's true, and unfortunately, that's the way it is. And then also too, like let's say it happens to be a car. Let's say your car was broken into and you had like $1,000 stereo system in there that got ripped out. Well, that's a little more serious than somebody taking a handful of change out. So we're probably going to try to do a little bit extra to try to figure out who it was. Well, if I go in there and try to take prints off, there is a chance of finding something. There's a chance I'm not going to find something. There's a big chance I'm going to make a mess of your car because fingerprint dust is crushed up lava rocks.
Oh, okay.
And it makes a giant mess, and it's hard to clean up. So a lot of times we'll say, I can try to find prints. just have to warn you that it is going to make a giant mess in your car. And a lot of people will say, don't worry about it. We'll explain the likelihood of finding something in there. But even if I do find a print in there, let's say somebody says, yeah, go ahead and do it. And then say I find a print. Now, I have to find out from the owner of that car, every single person that has been in that car. And I also need to get prints from them so that I can rule them out. It's not just, well, it matches this person.
Right. It's a process.
Yes. And that's one of the things with trying to, how many different people you've probably had in your car. I'm sure there's people in there you don't remember that were in your car before.
Right.
It's like, and it could come back that, it's hitting on your friend, and your friend happens to be, their fingerprints be in the system for some reason. It might not even be a criminal reason, it might just be in the system and it hits on it. Well, then I have to go and identify that person. I have to go interview that person and see if they may have been in your car, if they may have taken the stuff. Maybe you're friends, but that doesn't mean your friend won't steal from you.
Right.
So it's a huge process, and it's not as simple as take prints, it matches this person, they're under arrest.
Wow.
So obviously Walmart here, the typical, I've heard numbers as high as $1 million that this store alone loses.
Yeah, just from shoplifting?
Yes. I don't know how accurate that is, but that is a number that I've heard thrown around here. And this isn't this is a higher level theft store, but this isn't the highest in their corporation.
Wow.
But that is why they tend to prosecute more often than a lot of the other stores. Can you imagine however many thousands of, there's probably 2,000-3,000, I don't know how many Walmart stores there are. Let's say there's 2,000 Walmart stores. Just imagine if each one of those alone is losing $1 million a year. How much, it's hard to fathom that kind of money.
And is it when it's like minor shoplifting things, so like stealing like chapstick or something small?
It's as little as chapstick. It's as high as 72-inch screen TVs. $500, $600, $700 a pop.
How would you? I'm fascinated at how you could sneak a TV out the door.
Yeah. Well, I could tell you off the record, but I won't tell you on the record.
Yeah, you're good.
But it is easier than you would think.
People are.
That a lot of times happens at night. That tells you anything.
Yeah. So a lot more crimes around here probably occur at night, or is it mostly?
Yes and no. It just kind of depends on what a lot of stuff happens in the afternoon. Like as far as police work is concerned, we are busiest from, let's say, 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon till about 8 or 9 at night. That's probably the busiest time that we have. Does that mean we're always busy? No, but that is the busiest time. So, we're on 12-hour shifts now, but a couple years ago we were on 8-hour shifts, and the afternoon shift ran from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. If you would look back at the number of reports and arrests that they made compared to the day shift guys and the night guys, it's like night and day.
Oh, wow.
Just because that's the busy time. That's when people are home from work. That's when it starts to get dark outside. That's just when everything tends to happen. So it's when a lot of our traffic crashes are rush hour time. Have you tried to drive up and down this road between 5 and 6 p.m.?
I try not to be on the road between 5 and 6 p.m.
Well, this road is terrible. Traffic will be backed up to the Holiday Inn, from the Holiday Inn all the way to the center of town, all 3 lanes. And we get lots of crashes because of that. A lot of ours are rear end crashes. A lot of them are people trying to turn left across 3 lanes to get into one of these businesses here.
Gotcha.
And forget to account for that 3rd lane, which they're going 35 miles an hour, and they don't see them until they hit. So if anybody ever lets you across, just a word of advice, if anybody says, hey, you can go across here, you know, if like two cars leave, don't just rush across. Make sure that it's clear before you go. Because they're still not, ultimately you're still the one responsible. Even if that person says, go on through. You, as the vehicle operator, are responsible for what happens.
Right.
So, and some people find that hard to understand. They wave me through. Yes, but you're the one operating that car. You don't have to go through.
Right.
You still have to make sure. Yeah, you have to make sure that it is clear to do so.
Now, like restaurants here and everything, nothing like, no fights breaking besides the bar.
Yeah. No, I mean, no. It's when I first started working here, we would have walkouts, like at Denny's. Like people would like order $20-$30 worth of food, and then just walk out on the check and not pay for it, which is a theft. But I have not heard that happen in a long time. But that happened, I don't want to say frequently, but at least 2-3 times a year. And it always seemed to be Denny's. I don't know. Probably because they were about the only, at the time, they were the only like 24-hour restaurant that we had. Now we have the IHOP. But no, we don't really have walkouts or any problems really with the restaurants. In general, we don't have any problem with the schools. You know, every once in a while you have kids fighting, but it usually doesn't require us to respond. We have a full-time school resource officer that goes amongst but they have 4 buildings now. So they'll just call him directly if they have a problem anyways. But you know, like all schools, there's fights among the kids. Then the kids get suspended and it's over. The thing I like about, for this job at least, working here is we experience everything here, but it's not all the time. You know, like up in Cleveland or Akron or the bigger cities, like they experience that stuff that we're talking about like every single day. Like everything we've talked about, they experience that every single day. Like I've heard the Akron and Cleveland cops say that when they sign on to their shift, they've already got 4 or 5 calls waiting for them to go to. Where I've been to 2 calls all day today. So
is that what the beeping and stuff is for?
Sometimes, yeah. Like the last beeping was our dispatcher was running a driver's license number, and it had a warrant, so we get alerts when that happens. But sometimes, yes. It doesn't always beep for when we get calls, but.
So do you get to, like around here in the more non-city section, do you get any crimes out here? Or is it mostly just like...
We do. I mean, it's the thing is, it's pretty much like all the other stuff that we've already talked about. It's, you know, if it's a theft, it's a pay little theft. Sometimes we'll get break-ins to the businesses. You know, that happens every now and then. Was it this year? I think it was this year. Just this year. I can go over there if you would like me to. But another apartment complex directly north of here. One of the residents went to go do their laundry and found that they have a machine in the wall that you put your credit card in, and it spits out like a magnetic card that you can use to run the washing machines. Well, that was pried open and pulled from the wall, and the 2, the candy machine and the pop machine were. Oh, was it another one?
I don't know. I think that one was just recalculating. I hope. Are you? Looks like you're fine. I think you're fine. Yeah.
So that not only did they break into because it's a locked laundry room. Only residents have access.
Right.
So they broke into there. They destroyed a money machine. They destroyed 2 like candy machine and a pop machine. And they may have got $50 out of the whole thing, but did thousands of dollars worth of damage.
Yeah.
Luckily, they had a video camera on the outside and the inside. So I get the video from that. Facebook. That's the only thing Facebook's good for. Is posted it up on Facebook. I had a decent picture because he looks right at the camera. I had a decent picture, and I had our lieutenant posted on Facebook, and within a few hours, there was like a bunch of people identifying who it was. So I can't remember how eventually we end up talking. There was 2 guys involved. One guy drove a U-Haul truck, which was stolen, we believe. And another guy, went in. So we ended up finding out who the other guy was, and talked to his wife, and she looks at it's a really grainy, terrible picture. She looks at it and is like, oh yeah, that's my husband or ex-husband, whatever. I think they were in the process of being exes. And so we talked to him, and he's like, yeah, it was me. And, who was with you? And he said, the guy's name was Sonny. Sonny. Okay, so we end up, I never even talked to Sonny. We end up getting a warrant for him and charging the other guy that we actually interviewed, and we're able to solve it. But that's just was one of the, that's a case too where I checked for prints, I checked for all kind of stuff, and actually when I looked back at the video afterwards, I found out that he had wiped everything down. Like he actually cut one of the water lines to one of the washing machines and got like a sock he found on the floor wet and wiped everything down. So so I didn't even get any fingerprints in there. That's why everybody wants to check for fingerprints all the time, but it's like they hardly ever pan out. Every once in a while they do, but hardly ever do they ever pan out. But that was one of the ones where, a burglary that we are actually, or breaking and entering technically, we were actually able to solve. So, but we'll go over there. That's in the Lake Park Village Apartments.
Okay.
There. And there's probably like a ton of other stuff that's happened that, like I said, I don't know about or know where it happened. So I'm just kind of going by the stuff that I've been involved with, or that I know has happened.
It's a great help, really.
The thing is, it's like, I'm sure like in bigger cities, like there are areas of town that are more susceptible to crimes than others. Like for us, it's probably that commercial corridor is probably a little more susceptible to crime than like the general residential areas. But the thing is, the crime exists and happens all over town. So
I'm still very impressed that you guys work 12-hour shifts.
yeah, it's not too bad. It's usually 2 days on, 2 days off, and then every other weekend, like this weekend, we're off for 3 days, so we're off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But then the next weekend we have to work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that third day gets kind of rough.
Yeah.
Because you're doing 36 hours in a 72-hour period, and that's a lot of time at work.
Right.
So a lot of us are worn out by about 2/3 of the way through the day on Sunday. We're all about ready to go home.
Wow.
But it's a lot better though, because we get a lot more time off. So like I said, we don't, except for those weekend, every other weekend, we don't work more than 2 days in a row.
Right.
So I like it. I really do. I figured out once that, like, this isn't even including like all our other time off we get, but we, I think we're only scheduled out of 365 days a year. We're only scheduled to actually work 50% of those days.
Oh, okay.
And then we've got all this other time that we can take off as well. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
You're still working the same amount of hours in a year, but actually we work a little bit more because we would technically work 84 hours in a 2-week period.
Okay.
But it doesn't seem like it because you've got those other full days off.
Yeah.
You know.
Huh. I came in the back entrance. Okay.
This is the main campus for the schools. I don't know if you are you familiar with Streetsboro or not, but like everything but the high school is in here. They just remodeled all the buildings. They built the new high school and then remodeled, well, not all the buildings, the elementary school and the middle school. The old high school became the new middle school. They completely revamped that. The middle school right now is not being used, but they're thinking because of the influx of people moving in that they may have to open it back up.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they're in the process of, down off of State Route 43, building a housing development. It could be another 400 to 500 homes.
Oh, wow.
So that's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people. Oh, my goodness. Well, that's good. That's good for Streetsboro.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's great. See, I don't know much about Aurora. Aurora likes to...
They're on the down low.
Yeah. They don't like... It's weird. At least from living there for so many... You know, I grew up in Aurora. From seeing it, they just like being the small town city.
Yeah.
They don't really like to expand, but... So they're very picky about like what they put in.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Or like, I know Chipotle was a thing for a while to replace the old Starbucks. Now the Starbucks replaced the BP. But they don't want a ton of people so far, and they don't want to branch out from that. And yet I feel still like they're trying to be kind of like Hudson in a way.
Yeah.
With all those sidewalks and like walking
Right.
buildings and so
Right.
on. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know what you're trying to be, Aurora, but who knows? But it's definitely...
Yeah, I think Streetsboro tries to, you know, they have their master plan of, you know, stuff that they'd like to see and they don't want. The problem is if people are willing to, like whatever company wants to develop whatever, are they willing to fight to get their development done or not?
Right.
I mean, Streetsboro is more, I would say, middle class. Aurora's, you know, more upper middle class. So I mean, the housing, the cost of housing is significantly more. Like the houses that they're building in Aurora significantly cost more than what they do here. Not that they're cheap here by any stretch, but you know, so I think that's why one of the things I think why Streetsboro's been able to gain so much more population, because it's it's more affordable to live here.
Yeah.
But you can, and the thing with Hudson and Aurora is the way that the community is, it's more expensive to live there, so you can kind of pick and choose too, you know.
Oh yeah.
Is it, you know, is a $200,000 new home really going to fly in Aurora, or is it, you know, does it need to be $250,000 or $300,000?
Right. Yeah, the taxes kill.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. I think the taxes here are decent. That's another reason why I think there's the influx of people too. Where did I say? Oh, we were going to Lake Park Village, aren't we? I forgot.
It's okay. I think if you'd like, I don't know how any of this works. I'm gonna put it honestly to you, like what you need to do. But if you want to end it after Lake Park, we can, because I don't know how many cameras I have left.
That's fine.
Honestly,
yeah. That's completely up to you. I mean, you're the one that asked to ride, so like I said, I'm not going anywhere till 7. So.
Yeah. I'm hoping I got a lot of cool data, and thanks so much again. This was awesome. And
yeah, so you get a different perspective when you're in that seat as opposed to, you know, what you hear and everything else. That was one of the things. Have you ever heard of Live PD?
No.
Okay, well, it was like a reality show that they actually came here and they rode along with us for, I can't remember, it was maybe a month. But they had, it was kind of like Cops, but it was live.
Gotcha, okay.
So it ended up being, the council wasn't a huge fan of it. It was kind of hard for our department too, because we're smaller, to cope with that. Because basically what they did was, on their live nights, they had 2 patrol cars filled with cameras like what you have,
Right.
and equipment to live broadcast. Plus they had production crew in the cars as well. So that essentially took 2 cars. They could still go to calls, they could still stop cars, but they couldn't transport anybody if need be. They couldn't go pick up warrants if they needed to.
Yeah.
So it took 2 cars out of basically the lineup. So it just got a little bit too hard for us. But the nice thing about Live PD was it showed what we do. Like, whether it was here, I think there was a sheriff's office in like South Carolina, there might have been one in Florida, there was one somewhere out in the middle of the country, that sort of stuff. If you watched each department, they all dealt with exactly the same things. Different areas of the country, but the stuff you dealt with was exactly the same. It was always amazing. When I only watched one episode. It was the first episode we were on, and I was like, when I was watching the other departments, because cops is just, it's edited video. It's the exciting stuff that you're going to want to see. It's not the mundane. This is everything that this is what typically goes on in police work. This is, I'll pause a minute. This is in the main welcome center here. Gotcha. The laundry center right over in the corner there. Guys broke into it just earlier this year. It was in the wintertime. And there was a camera outside and a camera inside. There was actually 2 cameras on the inside. And got good pictures of his face. And that's how we got that one solved. But going back to Live PD, it was nice because the people that watched that, they got to see what police work for most places is actually like. Yeah. It's kind of what we're doing right now. Like, this is a lot of what I do. I'm not necessarily sitting here talking to somebody, but I'm driving around looking for people doing things, making it so that I'm seen. There's a reason why we drive around in black and white cars and not cars that don't have anything on them, so that people know who we are and can see. Because you can't ever quantify, like with me just sitting here like this, it's impossible to quantify how much crime I may be preventing just by sitting here.
Right. Now,
if I was in a white Jeep over there, I wouldn't be preventing any crime because nobody knows that I'm a police officer. But if somebody happens to be walking over here and like, I was going to break into that apartment, but there's a police officer right there, maybe I shouldn't this time. There's no way to gauge that, but it happens. That's why a lot of times for our department, they like for us to run a lot of traffic stops. And the reason is, the more that we are seen with our lights flashing in an area, the more that people say, oh, the police are out. Maybe I should behave today.
Right.
That's what we look at when it comes to traffic stops. It's not money. It's not anything else like that. It's about safety and it's about being seen.
Gotcha.
I can't say every department's like that. That's our philosophy. But
it is entirely new. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Just being seen stops.
I mean,
can prevent crime.
Yep. And I would have never thought about it until I was here too. But that's, like I said, there's a reason why we don't drive around in just plain old everyday cars.
Right.
And put some lights on them. It's so that people are seeing. Same with our uniforms. There's a reason why we wear uniforms, so that if we're out walking around, people know who we are.
That makes an awful lot of sense now that I think about past experiences.
Sure.
And that's actually quite brilliant.
and the thing is too is with we'll work like for Black Friday or whatever you want to call it, Thursday into Friday, whatever that you call that now. Like we had some guys that Walmart hired and that Target hired, and basically the only reason they were there was just to be seen.
Right.
They really weren't there to arrest anybody. If there's going to be an arrest made, it's going to be one of the duty guys. They were there more for security, just so that people knew that the police were there. So maybe there was a little bit less chance of somebody causing a fight or stealing something. So, yeah, like I said, there's two sides. You know, there's different perspectives, and
Well, definitely hear a lot of different perspectives.
yep.
And about somebody being in college, they were, I will admit, a lot of times too. And I guess I've met a lot of police officers. I actually used to work for one on his farm. But it's tough for you guys. And like I said, I really appreciate it because people just give you guys a bad rap, and it's like you're human too. You're just another.
Exactly.
You're a person.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We're not robots.
Mm-hmm.
We're prone to mistakes, just like everybody else. We're not perfect. Just like, you know, there's no perfect cops, there's no perfect doctors, there's no perfect lawyers, there's no perfect judges.
Right.
Everybody makes mistakes. And, you know, I think, you know, are there bad cops? Sure there are. There are terrible cops. There shouldn't be cops. But I think, in general, cops are there to, you know, do what they're sworn to do. Uphold the law and enforce the law. But unfortunately, there are some that don't do that. Just like with doctors, there's some doctors that rape their patients. But they took an oath too when they, you know, became a doctor to take care of their patients. And, you know, raping one of your patients is not taking care of your patient.
Right.
So I think, like I said, there are good aspects to social media, but I think, like I said, social media makes it super easy anymore to say whatever you want without any backup. You know, it's not like the news where, in general, like a news agency has to back up their story somehow.
Right.
Where on social media, you can just put whatever, and if enough people like what you had to say, it could be viewed hundreds of thousands of times, you know, and liked, and then it becomes viral, and then everybody, you know, then it's like, well, that's the gospel now because everybody liked it.
Jeez.
But
That's insane.
it's just, like I said, it's amazing. Like I never had that perspective until I started working here. Just, you know, how different this side is as opposed to what the general public. I knew nothing about police work until I started working here. And, you know, I thought I would just go out and, you know, you write a bunch of tickets and solve crimes and everything else. And it's not that way. It's a lot of frustration. You know, with the way the public views you, the way you're treated. When you know somebody did something wrong, but you don't have the proof you need to charge them. I really, like, especially with victims, like if somebody just takes some change out of a car, it's not a big deal. It's a crime, yes, but it's not a big deal. But like if somebody is assaulted or raped or, you know, or, you know, like a felonious assault, which is like serious injury, and you can't prosecute somebody for that, to me, and I'm sure most of the other guys too, that is frustrating.
Yeah.
Because my job is to protect you. I didn't protect you this time, but I'm going to find the person who did, bring it to justice. That's the way I view it. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that way. And it's hard. It really is. You know?
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Well.
And, you know, the drug problem. I know it's always out there, and it's always going to be out there. And then there's no way that I can stop it. That's frustrating. You know?
Yeah.
It is. It's
Crime is. Wow.
Yeah. And that's, like you said, like, we're human. There is a human side to this job. I think I have a lot of empathy for people too, maybe a little more than I should. But the thing is too, like, even criminals, they're humans. They're people. They've made a mistake. They may have made a lot of mistakes, but they made a mistake. So I'm not going to treat them any differently just because they made a mistake.
Right.
Now, I don't have as much respect for somebody that rapes or assaults somebody, but for the general stuff that we deal with, it's like, made a mistake, trying to do it again.
Right.
You know. So.
Well, thank you so much.
No problem.